After thousands of micro lessons, what have you learned about human behavior that you didn't know before you started your newsletter chain?
So, the first thing the first thing what I've learned about human behavior is kind of it's a little it's related between me and an audience. And I think anybody who makes anything will say this, anything at volume at least. I saw somebody saying this on X the other day. Probably the single biggest thing is that I've written as of today, I've written 2,088 daily disciplines, right? And the single biggest lesson of doing that is I still have absolutely no clue which lessons are going to stick and land and people are going to be interested in and tackle, and which ones are going to be duds. I mean, I will write, like, the joke I'll tell people when they ask sort of about it is I will write what I think will change the world. Like, I'll think this is going to win a Pulitzer Prize. This is going to be the thing that, launches into the stratosphere, and it'll be crickets. And some of my best performing, quote unquote, or best received content in daily discipline has happened at 10 p.m., after I've had dinner, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, I forgot to schedule daily discipline for tomorrow. And I will write something from a note that I have to myself, and I'll write it in 30 minutes and push it out. And I will get 200 replies on, oh my God, I cannot believe how much this is speaking to what's going on. Like, this is fundamentally changed. So, not that I try to do it that way, right? But so what I've learned is to write. For me, is I've learned to write truth. Write the truth as I see it. That's number one. Number two is what I've learned is that a lot of people are what I call principle collectors, not principle users.
I like
They
that.
love to collect principles that they know, uh, and they rarely actually apply those principles directly. The principles are a souvenir for them, and maybe it's just the era that we're living in, right? With podcasts and books and tweets and posts and Instagram and all the different stuff. Human beings have always known more than they actually execute. That's just a human nature thing. But a product of our world, or at least the era in which we are living, is that the volume of content has exploded, but the amount of our application has not changed at all. We are applying kind of at the levels we always have. So I was kind of like, the graph of, pick a topic, right? Like, and when I do keynotes, I will a lot of times I'll open with what's happened to the amount of leadership content over the last 26 years, basically the internet era from 2000 forward. What's happened to the amount of leadership content? I mean, it's exponentially exploded. It's a J curve going through the roof. What's happened to the quality of leadership execution over the exact same time period, if you were to map that graph?
Probably remain about the same.
Yeah, and then, some people are doomsday. I'm not like, oh, it's gone off a cliff. No, I don't think it's gone off a cliff. Like, there's areas where it has, not gotten better. There's areas where it has really dropped off, right? Like, probably the quality of the leadership in our education system. It's not great right now. Right? It's not great. Quality of leadership in our government, not great right now. I don't think that's a political statement. I think we can all kind of look and say, like, I don't think it's amazing. Right? I don't think it's awesome. Whereas, like in coaching in sports, I think it's gone up now, but it just hasn't gone up at the same degree that the content has. So how do we explain the explosion of knowledge and information and insight and learning that we've had just in the topic of leadership or diet and exercise? Diet and exercise is a great example. Like, we know, the things we've learned over the last 26 years about diet and exercise, unbelievable what we've learned. We could stop right now and not learn another thing about diet and exercise, and we know just about all the things we would know for people to be as healthy as they could want to be, again, within the realm of the human body's limitations, right? And people don't do it. Like, they just don't do it. So what the reason I say that is, like, sort of the learning is that the next frontier, right? The frontier that I'm betting on is we need to help people apply principles in the field of action where they operate. Right. And field of action is all field of action is a term for the reality that you live in. Right. That's it. So maybe your field of action is you run a gym. Maybe your field of action is you coach. Maybe your field of action is, you're a mom raising kids in a house. You don't have a job out in the world. Your field of action is your home, right? Your marriage, your parenting. Maybe your field of action is in a classroom. Maybe your field of action is as a CPA with clients. Maybe your field of action is you're a college student. The principles that you're learning and reading and consuming, like, they can't be souvenirs that sit on a shelf or in your Kindle that you downloaded or that you post and say, I read these books this year. Because the field of action, frankly, even, creating content or a post you write or whatever, the field of action doesn't care how many views a YouTube video gets. Like, the only thing that matters in the field of action is, does it work? And that's where I've always lived, is, does it work? And so I get the reason I started Daily Discipline 8 years ago was 9 years ago now, 2018, was that I got frustrated how many people were hearing things and then just still not doing them. And so that's why every Daily Discipline ends with do the work. Like, that's it. And so now I'm in my 9th year of writing Daily Discipline, 2,088 messages in, and I'm more in belief of that than I was when I even started. That the big gap is transitioning from, it's not information, it's not knowledge. If that was it, we would have solved this a long, long time ago. It's transferring from the exposure and the knowledge, and frankly, even the training, into the field of action. How do you get it into the field of action where you are operating and actually apply the principle there so that you can generate some evidence, get some feedback and consequences about what's happening, good, bad, or indifferent, and then learn, how good am I actually at doing this? And then, does this principle actually work in the field of action where I operate? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So those are like the two big things that immediately jump to my mind. Obviously I could go for a long time. I could go for 3 hours on everything that I see, because I get a front row seat access to a lot of people's experiences as they reply to Daily Discipline and interact in our community and stuff about what they're trying to do. But those are the two that jump out to me.
I read earlier this week, it was learning is a smart man's version of procrastination. And that gap between what we learn and what we do, for, like you just said, majority of people, in generalizing here, is really far. And any successful person, depending on your definition of success, there's a razor thin gap between thought and action. There's a razor thin gap between what we learn and what we do. And the closer we can get to that is the closer we can get to having the agency to build the best version of ourselves. What do you think the difference is between the people who are able to create that razor thin gap between thought and action, as opposed to the people who learn, know all these principles, but never change, act in alignment with what they've learned?
Courage, two things: courage and discipline. Courage is the willingness to act when you're afraid, and all of whatever the manifestations are of fear. People don't like to acknowledge or admit that they're afraid, but then they say, I have anxiety. Well, that's fear. I have doubt. That's fear. I'm uncertain. That's fear. And we don't like to say it, but we say that's fear. Or we don't say that's fear. We say it's something else, but it's really just fear. Something interesting, if you're interested in that, a tool that is awesome, it's called the emotion wheel. Have you ever heard of the emotion wheel?
I have not.
So the emotion wheel is cool. It's super simple. You can literally Google it and then go to images, and then you can find, there's thousands of versions of them. Just find one that makes the most sense to you. But human beings experience only a handful of core emotions. And there's a couple different debates and schools of thought on what they are. But like, the solidified ones are fear, joy, sadness, surprise, disgust, anger. There's debates on love, happiness, that's joy, right? But these are the core emotions. And what an emotion wheel is, at the center of the wheel, think about like a pie or a pizza. At the center of the wheel are these core. And then as the wheel expands outward and it gets bigger, there are all of the layered examples or manifestations of that emotion, but more nuanced and specific contexts, right? But what it does is it ties and it shows visually anxiety is just a manifestation of fear, right? That's all it is. And so what it does is it shows you all the specific things that you might feel, or a label we might call it, or a specific application, and is showing you, hey, that's really just this emotion. That's all it really is. And I found it to be very useful for myself, and like having kids and being married and interacting with people, that when I can see maybe something on the outer side of the wheel that's very specific, or term that people use, or what looks like what people are feeling, is for me to be able to go back and remember that's just this emotion. They're just feeling this emotion. Like, it's just fear. They're just sad. They're just surprised. They're just angry. And I don't mean just to minimize it. I mean to just come back and say, hey, it's not all this confusing. It's just anger. They're angry. Okay, great. Like, let's address that. So being able to identify that and bring it back is super important, right? So when I look at that, what was that? Remind me the question you asked that sparked us into this. I was describing the emotion wheel, and I lost track where we were connected to.
No, the difference between the people who are able to create that razor thin gap between thought or learning and action and the ones who can't.
Yeah. So so courage being it. And so connecting back to the fear. So the reason the reason why I say courage is, at the end of the day, the things that stop us from action, they're not complex. It's just a lot of times it's that we either don't understand them or don't have the tools for navigating them. And so what stops somebody from acting when they know they need to is fear, right? And there's a lot of things we'd be afraid of, but the script in most people's head, whether it's explicit or implicit, is I'll act when the fear goes away. And the thing, Colin, is the fear never goes away. I'll do it when I'm not full of doubt. Once I overcome doubt, then I'll do it. And the thing, Colin, is you don't ever beat doubt, ever. The second you beat doubt, you do something, and then that doubt goes away, but your action then brings you into an environment that introduces you to a new doubt. So every time you quote unquote overcome doubt, it levels you up and exposes you to something new that reintroduces doubt again. And now you're back into doubt, just onto something else, right? You're like, I doubt whether I could start a business. Well, you start a business, and you beat that doubt. You're like, man, I did start a business. But then you get introduced on, I doubt I can sustain this. Well, then you do sustain it for a while. You're like, I doubt I can grow it. I doubt I can keep it. I doubt I can sell it. I doubt I can hire people. I doubt I can charge. I'm saying, like, you never beat it. You just keep elevating to a new kind of doubt. So that's the thing is, it's not, this is age old, and this goes all the way back to, you can go back to 2500 BC. The Greeks were writing about this. About, there's maxims from ancient Greece saying, once you know, you must do. You must act on what you know. Because what they recognized was, in ancient Greece in 2500 BC, when they did not have all the knowledge and intelligence that we have today, with whatever they had, they still didn't act on it. And the things that got in the way were fear, or simply the discipline to continue doing the action. So courage and discipline, if you just built two skills. Now, I have kids, right? If I could give my kids two skills, I'd be hard pressed to find, if I just said, hey, I'm going to give my kids courage. Again, not because I can gift it to them, but like to build it into them. I'm going to build courage into you, and I'm going to build discipline into you. And then other than that, you do whatever you want. But if my kids don't have courage and my kids don't have discipline, they are not going to build a very good life. Full stop. It doesn't matter how smart they are. A smart person without courage ends up failing.
I think the important part is I'm big on I care less about the emotion and more what we do about it. And redefining what our relationship is and without going into like super complex details about what anxiety, stress, these different emotions, feelings are, it's understanding the root of them. Like you said, a lot of anxiety comes from fear. A lot of what we define as anxiety probably really isn't anxiety. And if you can understand what that fear is, you can put together your own process or game plan to attack that fear. And then at a certain point, you realize, and honestly, Brooks Koepka said this in an interview the other day, and I loved it. And I sent it to some of my athletes. They were talking to him about his return to PGA Tour. And he was like, I was insanely nervous on that first tee. He hit it right down the middle. And then he joked because he didn't play as well off the tee the rest of his round. He's like, I guess I should have been more nervous on the other holes. And it's the point that just because you feel nervousness or anxiety or stress or some other type of emotion doesn't mean that you can't operate or perform at a high level. I'm not telling you to ignore your emotions. I'm not telling you to disregard them. But once you understand where they're coming from, you can live and succeed in a really high stress environment, even with a range and herd of emotions on the back end that feel like they're infiltrating you, but really you just have to step in and control and dictate your responses.
So two things. I mean, one, you're totally right. Um, you're totally right. And so, you made a point, and let me underscore it. Most people who feel fear, and whatever the manifestation of it is, anxiety, again, I'm going to call it fear because I'm going to make sure we're talking about the base emotion, and then whatever comes out of it. So whatever term you want to call it, and if you're like, I don't like the word fear, or I'm masculine, or I'm tough, or I'm whatever, and I don't want to acknowledge I don't fear anything, or it makes you feel too vulnerable to use the word fear. I'll meet you where you are, whatever term you want to call it. I'm okay with that. All right. I'm only interested in the reality of what's happening. But two things. Number one is most people have no idea what they're actually afraid of. And because they don't know what they're afraid of, they can't actually address it. I'll give you an example. I don't remember if we talked about this last time, but people say they're afraid of failure, and they're not afraid of failure. They're not, because somebody who says they're afraid of failure, Colin, what are the typical patterns that you see from somebody who is afraid of failure? Like what's the most common frequent patterns? Like you're like, oh man, they're caught in the grip of fear of failure. What do you usually see from somebody who is saying that about themselves?
Usually you're less afraid of the fear of failure and more fear of the opinions of people who are watching you fail is
But I'm
normally
saying, like,
where
what's
I
the
see it
behavior? Like,
prevalent.
what's the behavior pattern that shows up in somebody who says, "Oh, I'm afraid of failure"? Like, what are you
Yeah,
seeing? It says, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" And they say, "Oh, it's because I'm afraid of failure." What's the behavior that
I
we?
feel like hesitancy, pacing, like sweating,
Here you go,
right?
right?
Like your mind wandering, like, you're
Yeah,
sitting in this like like you can just see they're kind of like edgy,
yeah,
sketchy.
yeah. You see inaction, hesitant action, halfway commitment, resistance, avoidance, backing away, right? Okay. Well, here's my thing: if you're afraid of failing, and that's the true fear, that's really the fear, failing. Oh, I'm so afraid that I will fail. Does not hesitation, avoidance, backing down, halfway committing, does that not accelerate your failure? So you're engaging in a behavior that accelerates the thing you say you're afraid of happening. I always use the example, and again, if we talked about this last time, we just get a little quick little
No, I
reset.
don't
Like
think we did.
when I was in college and I was single, I use this example every time because that's the human thing. You can go back to high school with prom or whatever, but like my example is like I played college football. I come out with my guys. We'd go around. Like I would, my buddy would see a girl, be like, man, look at her, she's cute. Like I'd be like, go talk to her, and he'd be like, no, no. I'm like, why not? He's like, well, like what if she shoots me down? I'd say, then continue not dating her. Who is she? I don't know. How many dates have you been on with her? None. So if you walk over and you talk to her and then she says, get away from me, what have you lost? You don't even have it right now. So my point is, how can you be afraid of not having something you don't have? Here's what it is. Fear of failure is being afraid of ending up where you are right now. That's crazy. Okay? So if failure is what you're really afraid of, now here's the truth, okay? Cut through the noise. What does somebody who is genuinely, truly afraid of failing, and like failing specifically, that is the true fear. What behavior pattern emerges out of somebody who is genuinely terrified of failing? They do everything in their power to win. They exhaust themselves to win. So, as a signal, if I look at somebody and they are not doing everything possibly required to win and succeed, I know that person is not afraid of failure. They're afraid of something else. And they don't even know what it is. They're afraid of embarrassment. They're afraid of rejection. They're afraid of isolation. They're afraid of not being good enough. They're afraid of, doing something. They're afraid of losing social standing. They're afraid of discomfort. They're afraid of whatever. It's not failure they're afraid of. So, right now, let's play a scenario out. Okay, let's say you and I are at the bar. You and I are out wherever. Okay, and we're backing our boys. And we're in college. Okay, and I walk. You see me. I point at a girl. And I'm like, hey, I walk over there, and I'm like, I'm gonna go talk to her. And you see me walk over and talk to her. You see her shoot me down. You see me walk back to you. Okay, if we're boys, what are you saying to me? Are you saying, BK, man, I am so proud. I was watching your effort, and you were courageous. You were disciplined about that attempt, and I love the fact that you tried, and it's okay that it didn't work out. There's a lot of fish in the sea, buddy. Is that what you're saying to me if you're boys with me?
Not in college.
Not in college.
I might.
Maybe you might. Yeah, now you might, right? But if we're in college, what are you saying to me?
No, I'm giving you the hardest time ever. I am making fun of you, telling you look stupid, things of that nature, being a typical, typical college guy.
Yeah. So what am I really trying to avoid?
I'm trying to avoid the embarrassment of it.
I'm trying to avoid the rejection of social status from her, and I'm trying to avoid the embarrassment that I would get from you, my friend, because I don't want you to do that to me, and I don't want to feel like that. I'm not afraid of not getting the date or meeting the girl or failing in that endeavor. I'm afraid of the things I attach to that. And here's how real that is. Now change the scenario where I'm by myself and I'm in the social setting. Doesn't matter what it is, coffee shop, bar, whatever. I will also be afraid of going out and having that conversation. And by the way, this translates to sales. This translates to starting a business. This translates to putting out content anywhere. Because it's, I'm saying asking on a date because, we did this at prom in high school. Like, we'd be afraid to ask somebody at prom because what? Well, the worst thing in the world was asking somebody to prom and they told you no. Because then everybody would, I'm saying, go right back to like those teenage heavy emotions. We remember that. Go back to 8th grade asking a girl to a dance, right? Kids don't do dances anymore, but back in our day, that's what we did, right? And so we're not afraid of the result itself, the failure in that sense. We're afraid of what we attach to the failure, which means if you don't have embarrassment or rejection or identity attached to that failure, all of a sudden, that fear of failure isn't even real because you realize, oh, I'm not afraid of the failure because I could fail privately and be fine. Like, I could fail privately and be fine. Also, why would I not be afraid? Why am I not afraid of just not getting a date, period? That's failure, isn't it?
That is failure.
I want to meet her. I want to know her. Right? I want to get her number. Okay, well, so instead I just don't ask. Well, didn't I fail? Why am I not afraid of that? Why am I afraid of not getting it? Because to me, that's failure. There it was. You wanted it. You didn't get it. Failed. Whether you attempted or didn't attempt is irrelevant to the actual outcome. You didn't get it. But in one scenario where I don't ever go out there and I don't ever ask, what's the one thing what did I take out of my experience? What did I not get? The rejection, the embarrassment, the loss of social status. That reveals the true fear. It's like a player, it's like in college. Like if you, not college, but like, in any kind of athletes, like if you kind of don't try your hardest in a drill or an exercise, whatever you're doing, if you don't try your hardest, you can be like, yeah, I didn't get that outcome, but it's because I didn't do this, da, 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 da. And you get to maintain all your...
That was exactly me, but from an academic lens.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
my thing was, at a very young age, I was propelled in all like advanced learning classes. I was really naturally smart. I picked things up quickly, didn't take me very long. Then I became associated, for me, everything was easy. And then the second I had some challenge academically, I shut down, right? I began to get that fear of status, right? The fear of embarrassment, the fear of rejection. And so where I defaulted was, well, I'm not even going to try. I'm not going to try and look how good I did. I gotta be on this paper. My friend got an A. It's like, well, you studied for 8 hours. I didn't do anything. Imagine if I did try. It becomes a default mechanism, a defense mechanism that you utilize to give yourself an excuse for failure. And the reality is, internally, we sometimes will analyze the situation without even thinking about it and determine that the failure of the outcome without the attempt is a better option than trying and failing, because of all the things that we've articulated up to this point that come with that failure. But
Yes.
what we're not calculating in that, split second decision, or at least consciously we're not calculating, is, well, what if I try and it goes right? What if I try and I get everything I wanted? What if I try and I get everything I've ever dreamed of, asked for? We have a hard problem looking at that in the attempt. We bring all the other nonsense to the forefront of our mind because, we have negativity biases naturally, instead of focusing on, what if everything goes exactly how I want? And nothing can go exactly how you want if you're not willing to put yourself in the arena, if you're not willing to put in the work, if you're not willing to attempt. And that is a really hard way to be. It's simple in thought, but it is very hard to execute. But it's always, I kind of look at the world as haves and haves nots. I don't care about your money status. I care about, how you view your own internal success. Most people aren't really internally fulfilled, but the
Hmm.
people who are the haves of the world are able to analyze that and be like, well, what if everything goes right? And they're able to center their identity around someone who's willing to put themselves in those scenarios to get everything that they've ever wanted.
Yep. Absolutely. And I want to come back to you had asked about learnings. I want to touch on the relationship between, I call it external excellence and internal fulfillment. We can come back to it. And you're hitting on an important piece, because which leads into the second thing about these emotions. The first being that people do not know. People usually don't know what they're afraid of, and because they don't know what they're afraid of, they stay in it forever, because they don't ever know which fear they're trying to resolve for. They think, oh, I'm solving for my fear of failure by not exposing myself to it, when the reality is they are actually extending the fear of failure, or not extending the fear, they're extending the failure. Right? By not asking for the date, you continue to not have it. By not launching the business, you continue to not have it. By not getting a raise, you continue to not be there, which means you're still separated from it, which means you're still going to be in that space. So the first piece, actionable, right? Moving into the field of action is, the field of action move is, you need to diagnose and figure out what you are really afraid of. So the easiest technique to do this, it is so simple, is write down. You can write it. Writing it down makes the most sense, because you make it physical, and then you make it visual, and it gets outside of your brain, because thoughts that stay inside your brain, you can manipulate them however you want. But once it's written on a piece of paper, your brain connects with it differently. So you write down, and whatever the failure is that you're imagining, just picture it, right? So, let's, you can go with my example. Okay. I'm afraid of getting rejected by a girl, because I'm afraid of, and then write down, why are you afraid of that? I'm afraid of how it would look to people who saw that. Okay. And you go down a line and you say, I'm afraid of how that would look to people who saw that, because I'm afraid of, and you write down, and this is the whole point. If you don't know what that is, this is my point. Why are you afraid of that? And if you can't actually write it out, now you know you have a fear that is controlling and driving your behavior that you're not even conscious of. You're giving your command center, right, the sticks to steer you. You don't even know what it is. And so do that like five levels. And what you're going to find is you're actually going to get down to a fear that maybe you haven't consciously thought of, but is real. And here's the thing I would remind people of. And somebody's like, I don't really know. Like, I can't think of it. That's okay. But you got to know that that fear is in there, even if you're not consciously aware of it. And I think some people think this starts to get foo-foo. It's not foo-foo. I mean, it's basic physics. If the fear wasn't there, then you wouldn't be feeling it. Like if the fear wasn't there, your behavior would be different. But the fear is quite obviously there, and there, even if you aren't conscious of it, somewhere in your brain, somewhere in your mind knows that fear, and it recognizes it and it reacts to it. Your job is just write it down. So write down, I'm afraid of blank because I'm afraid of blank. Answer A. And then I'm afraid of answer A because I'm afraid of like underlying fear. So kind of what you want to do is go like underlying fear, underlying fear, underlying fear, underlying fear, and then really kind of like 4 levels. And then I'm afraid of usually like 2 or 3 underlying fears. And then what you get to is then you get down to I'm afraid of this underlying fear, the 3rd level one, because I'm afraid of this deeper fear. And then I'm afraid of that deeper fear because I'm afraid of the real fear. And the real fears are almost always identity driven. Almost always. It's not failure. Okay. So I'll give you, so that's number 1. Number 2, does that make sense? Like I'm afraid of this because I'm afraid of that. It's such a simple thing. And you can see right away, like if you try to do that in your mind and hold it in your mind, it gets way too messy, way too fast. So, because your mind will go in 1,000 ways with 1,000 thoughts at 1,000 miles an hour. You got to write it down to like keep yourself structured around this. Super helpful. Number 2 is this, and I've been writing about this on Daily Discipline this week. So I'm writing about courage, right? About acting while you're afraid. And one of the things that I've kind of realized is people don't understand the nature of how fear works. And so if you ask yourself, where did this fear come from? What brought this fear into my presence? Right? Here's a great reference point to remember. When you feel fear, you have to remember that's because you're in the presence of desire. Fear is paired to a desire. Fear and desire go together. So what happens is, and this is, you can go back, I mean, this is every philosophical and religious text ever written has understood this intuitively and then built these structures around it. Fear is the manifestation of threatening of a desire. So a fear is simply, I desire something, and the desire has elevated my fear. So where does fear of losing come from? Fear of losing comes from the desire to win. If somebody doesn't have a desire to win, they do not fear losing. If they fear losing, it's because they have a desire to win. So what happens is, by looking at your desires, you learn about your fears, and by looking at your fears, you learn about your desires. If I'm afraid of being rejected by somebody, whether it's like sales or in pitching a business or in something, if I'm afraid of rejection, it's because I desire acceptance. That seems pretty important to know.
I love the conversation about desires. Have you read Naval or listened to Naval talk at all?
I know of him, and I've sort of seen tangentially. I'm not a deep reader of Naval, but I'm a surface level reader. Yeah.
Yeah, so he has this take on desire. We talk about things that just like kind of just like really resonate with you. And it's like if you are not willing, and I think James Clear talks about it too, to be honest, but if you are not willing to pay the price for your desire, rid yourself of the desire. Because like you're articulating so many different things that we have this desire and that it, creates this fear and then that fear creates the inaction. Well, if you're not willing to do it or you're not willing to face that fear or become disciplined or become obsessed or whatever or the necessary behavior is, then rid yourself of the desire. Super difficult to do in practice, but simple in theory, right? Have the self-awareness, If I'm not going to do that, if I'm not willing to put all everything it takes to be that, get rid of the desire. Because if you have too many desires and nothing is resulting in action, that is just a recipe for misery. And, I look at it in my own life because instantly, because I'm competitive and, I have an obsessive personality, I'll have these just innate natural desires and I have to walk it back. Like I think about like pickleball or I think about golf and it's like I want to be the best golfer or the best pickleball player. It's like but the reality is I'm probably not willing to do what it takes to become the best pickleball player. If I'm lucky, I can play pickleball once a week. If I'm lucky, I can play golf twice a week. And that is just not the recipe required to be the best in those domains. And so I can walk back those desires and just be like, okay, I want to be a casual golfer. I want to go have fun with my friends and not lose my ball every hole. Okay. I want to be a pickleball player who can just go have fun and not be the worst one there. Right. And then you can like downstream from ridding yourself of the desire, but you have to have the awareness I'm not going to do this. And then have a few dedicated, articulated desires where you're like, I am willing to go on in all in on this. I am willing to face that fear. I am willing to create the behaviors, processes, systems, habits that are required to achieve this. And that's where so much disconnect comes is because we can't look at ourselves without judgment and say, I'm just not willing to do that. And then you can reduce your desires to your level of behavior or the inverse. I have a desire. Okay, well, I'm going to flip my behaviors to reach that desire.
And the thing that I would want people to understand about this is that is that desire and fear always operate in pairs. And this is the physics of the world. Like it's like gravity, and not everybody knows this. So this is what I love to do. I love to share physics of the human nature element of world. Desire and fear work in pairs. So everything you desire puts a fear into you. If you this is you cannot have a desire that does not also give you fear. That's not physically possible for a human being. Also, the strength of the desire is always matched by the strength of the fear. So the stronger the desire, the stronger the
fear.
fear. You have kids?
I do. I have three.
Three. You have three kids. How old?
I have one that's 4, one that's 2, and one that is 4 months.
Okay. Is not your desire your desires for your kids? I mean, is that not one of the strongest feelings in the world
In the
for a
world,
dad?
it's the strongest.
There you
It's
go.
the strongest. Yeah.
And simultaneously, look at the fear that comes with that.
Yep. The greatest
Right?
fears.
And we do what we have to do, right? In that environment, right? The desire typically outweighs the fear, but for a lot of parents, their fear outweighs their desire. A lot of parental behavior and what they do with their kids is because their desire is so strong and so intimate for their kids that the fear is also strong and they have no plan for dealing with the fear. And the fear ends up running the show because that desire fear pair goes together. Whereas, right? Now, with my kids, I know the way I think of it is my desire is high. And so then my fear is also matching, but I know what to do with it. And I have a plan for how to do with it. And then you have other parents who are like, yeah, they don't have as much desire around their kids. I don't mean love, I don't mean they care, but like their desire isn't as strong for like wanting to shape and build and do the X, Y, Z. And so then therefore their fears, so they kind of have a little more laissez-faire with their kids and they kind of hang out. But like parenting is a good example of biologically we're naturally connected to desire for our kids, which means we're naturally connected to fear. And I remember feeling as a dad for the very first time what it felt like to have a son and like being exposed to all of a sudden like biologically feelings of right fear that I'm like, that's new. I haven't felt that before, right? Like that's brand new for me, right? I had kids at I had kids at like 34, 35, and I'm like, okay, 34, 35 years on this earth, that is a new emotion for me that I'm feeling, right? Because it was a new desire and it was a new fear. But it's the same thing, and I'll give an example. When I do a keynote, I talk to people about this, and the same thing happens here. Is most people are afraid of public speaking. It's the number one phobia in the world is public speaking, and it's the number one. Phobia is just a fancy word for fear. It's the number one fear because people are afraid of being rejected. They're afraid of being ridiculed. They're afraid of being embarrassed. They're afraid of being a social outcast because they're on stage and everybody's looking at them, right? They want the audience's approval. Okay. And so why? Look what happens. Desire for approval is matched. And by the way, the more intense that desire is, it's
Yep.
matched by fear of rejection. The higher the desire for approval, the greater the fear of rejection. The greater the fear of rejection signals the higher the desire for approval. Like it's physics. What goes up must come down. It operates on those things. So I will talk to people when I deliver keynotes about sort of this dynamic in this relationship. And I will express and explain in my case, here's how I think of this. When I'm on stage, I remind myself, and this is just my natural way now, at no point in my life did I need the approval of anybody in this audience. So I do not have a fear of your disapproval. But the only reason I don't fear the audience's disapproval is that I don't desire their approval. I have erased that desire. I don't desire. Now, does that mean I don't want the audience to learn something? Of course not. Does that mean I want the audience to not like me? No. Does that mean I have no care at all about whether they like me? No, not at all. But what I've done is I've said, I'm not walking into this with this desire to be accepted by the group in front of me, because what that's going to do is that's going to create fear of what if they don't. So instead, what I go into, and I attach my desires to, I want to express what I believe in the best possible way that I can. I want to share as much value as I possibly can. Now, there is nothing standing in my way. My fear doesn't have a whole lot to grab onto, because it's like, well, what if I don't do that very well? That's up to me. But if I'm here seeking your approval, Colin, or your audience's approval, and I desire it so bad, now all of a sudden the fear of what if I get rejected, I can't actually do anything about it. Because I can't control what you think of me. I can't control your approval. So now I have a fear that I can't do anything about. Whereas if I attach my desire to, right now with us, like, say what I want to say it articulately, say it clearly, like express it, listen to the idea, like, interact, be valuable, be helpful. My fear is, what if I don't do it? No, I can do things about this fear now. So if my desire is attached to something outside of my control, then my fear will be attached to something outside of my control. That's how we put ourselves in a very, very bad situation. But if my desire is attached to something in my control, right? And then I can have like a mission of something I'm trying to accomplish. But if we use this word sort of desire, now all of a sudden we've changed that whole relationship. So the lesson I want people to grab here is that if you feel a fear, you've got to connect that to the desire that's triggering it. And if you don't know what, and if you feel a desire and you're finding yourself hesitating to go after it, you got to recognize that's because the fear that desire is creating in you is winning out over the desire. So like the desire to ask the girl on the date gets beat by the fear of her rejecting you. So what we do is we write off our desires because of the fears that it created. But just think about that for a second. The desire I have created a fear that caused me to not chase that desire. And people will live in this loop. They'll live in this loop for 20 years, 50 years,
People live
5
that their whole
years,
life.
their whole college career,
It's it's such an interesting thing because you bring up public speaking, and I do some like speaking things now, and it shocks people when I tell them I used to have an absolute just fear of public speaking. I would sweat, I couldn't talk, I would stutter, I couldn't get presentations in school, and then they're like, I would never guess. And to exactly what you're articulating, I had to unpack what was my fear actually, and it was I was worried about how I'd be perceived. And so for me, my process was very similar to you in making it about the message because and we talked about this off air, you have a message that is inherently valuable. You know something that is that works, it will help people genuinely. And so for me, I had to put all of my mental energy into that is I know this is valuable. So what can I control? Number one, I'm going to control how I prepare because if I prepare and know exactly what I want to say, it may come out a little bit different when I'm on the stage, but I know the ethos of what I'm saying is going to come out. And I know by focusing on that, if the people are paying attention, they are going to get value from it. And then there's the other part of me that I call it, I actually play out the catastrophizing. I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
what happens if I botch this? Okay. I may be a joke to these guys or girls for probably the next 15 minutes, maybe an hour. And most of them are probably going to forget about it anyway. And then it's like, okay, would this prevent me from getting another engagement? Probably not. Maybe at this school, maybe with this team. Sure. Maybe not get one with them. Is it going to prevent me from getting something else? No. Right. And then it's like, okay, well, guess
Will
what?
my kids still love me? Will I still have
Yes.
my yeah, all of the stuff that I genuinely, deeply, truly care about. Like that's that
Will
you're saying the
still
same
be
thing like
there.
that I say. What's like I look in an audience and I will do this still sometimes just to keep myself sharp. I will look at the audience and I will look at like faces and eyeballs and I'll look and I'll be like, who whose approval have I needed for me to be okay in my life? And I'll look around. Which person does my sense of self-worth revolve around? And like when I see faces, I look at people, I'm like, none of them. None of them. So if that person doesn't like me, it is fundamentally not at all different than yesterday.
Yep. And the other piece of it too is in 60 years, or depending on your age, in 100 years, we're all going to be dead and none of our opinions mattered anyway. So it's why would I let a singular opinion of someone prevent me from living out my life or doing something that I feel is valuable or care about? Because the reality is they're going to die and their opinion's going to die with them. And there's this
And
there's this
they're allowed to not like us, by the way.
yeah,
Like that's the thing. Like they're allowed to not like. It's okay.
and we don't like everybody.
It's okay.
So
Like
it's
not go. I go back to my analogy. I tell people all the time. Like my man. Like not every girl in the world likes me. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't like every girl in the world. Like it's okay. Like
right.
I told this story to somebody the other day. I married one woman. She's amazing and she's awesome. Okay. I married one woman. That is not an indictment on every woman in the world. It's just that's the woman that I love, and I picked her, and she picked me. Right? Like that's it. It that's the nature of the game. Like you can't listen to everything. Like we don't do that with everybody. So it's okay. Go try. Go do. People are gonna find their way to these spots, and it works.
As a take what that and that's a good like from a learning perspective when because like you said there is an immense amount of information out there. Take what works for you, disregard the rest, and apply it. Not everything everybody says, including myself, and I'm fully aware of that. Not everything I say is going to impact someone in exactly the way that I believe it should. That's perfectly fine. When you are a receiver or a recipient of information, of learnings, of whatever, you take it, you apply it. If something I say doesn't resonate, don't take it, don't apply it. Go find something from someone else. That's just the nature. We're all complex human beings, and there's a lot of gray area and nuance to each one of us and how we learn and behave. Not You're not going to agree with everybody on everything. It's not possible. You and I could never possibly agree on everything in life, from parenting to religion to sports
No
to
chance.
whatever.
No
But that
chance.
doesn't mean that we don't have things that can be passed on that are valuable from one another. And if you just approach everything that my wife and I aren't going to agree on everything, I can certainly tell you that. So it's like the people we love most, we're not going to agree with all the time. And there's going to be times where my wife doesn't like me. There's already times where my kids don't like me. So it's, you know,
I heard some the other
nobody's,
day said I married my wife for her looks. I don't mind admitting that. Just not the looks she's been giving me recently.
it's true though, right? Like it's so funny and like we can laugh about it, but yet internally there'll be times where I'm like, and we talked about it off air. I'm like, man, I really want this person to like me, or I don't want to upset this person, or this is preventing me from doing that. And even though we know distinctly nobody, it's impossible for everybody to like you. And so, even when it's still hard to act and implement, but the closer you can get to recognizing the awareness, then because actions are downstream from awareness, then you're just putting yourself on the right path. Along these same lines, you say that integrity can mean either raising your behavior to match your beliefs or lowering your stated beliefs to match your actual behavior. How do you acknowledge that gap and determine which way you go?
So the first thing is understanding what the word integrity means. A lot of people misinterpret integrity as doing the right thing. That's not what integrity means. Or doing good things. That's not what integrity means. One, because we were just talking about, you and I don't, well, we won't agree on everything. So when we say do the right thing, who gets to decide that? I mean, you got 3 kids, I have 2 kids. Well, I don't always how often do you and your wife disagree about what the right thing to do with parenting one of your kids in a particular moment is, about whether they should make them eat their dinner or not let them eat their dinner? What's right? It's like, well, then you end up debating. It's like, so that we can't leave integrity to that. Plus, that's not what integrity is. Integrity comes from the Latin word integritas, and it means to be whole. So the word integrity, all it means is to be whole and consistent. That's it. So what whole and consistent means, and we use the word integrity outside of the human context, the behavior context, in engineering. We talk about a building that has structural integrity, right? When we say it has structural integrity or it lacks structural integrity, what we're saying is all of the pieces are in the right place and they will stand up under pressure, or it will not stand up under pressure. So if a building lacks structural integrity, what it's saying is it's not whole, it's not complete, there's parts missing. And if something happens, if there's a disruption, because it's not whole, it's going to fall apart. So in the human world, in the behavioral world, what integrity means is to be whole and complete with how you are living your life, specifically between anything on the inside and anything you're doing on the outside. So a lack of integrity, lying is a lack of integrity because you're portraying one thing but doing another. It's not whole, it's not complete. You're not consistent from here to here. Whereas if I say I'm going to lie to you and then I lie, that's integrity. If I say I'm going to be honest and then I tell the truth, that's integrity. And it's kind of a funny way for people to think about it. They laugh when I say it, but it's why we say things like honor among thieves. Because it's mafia code, or it's why gangs work, right? Like, you would think it's something, but at the end of the day, those environments operate according to human nature as well. There's a code. You follow the code. Like, if you don't follow the code, absence of integrity. If you follow the code, presence of integrity. And it has context. So with desire and discipline, it's an absence of integrity, because you're saying I desire this, but then you're not doing anything to go get it. Or you say you believe in this principle, but then you want discipline enough to actually live it. What it's saying is, it's not saying you're unethical. It's saying you lack integrity. You lack wholeness. You lack completeness. So how do you gain completeness? Well, you gain completeness by either elevating your discipline to match your desires, or lowering your desires to match the discipline that you're willing to do. Bring yourself into whole alignment, completeness. It's fine. Tell me what you believe. Tell me how you operate, and I can deal with you. I in my life, I deal with this all the time. I would much rather deal with somebody with low standards who communicates it than somebody who says they believe in high standards, but then is all over the place. Low standard people who are consistent are far easier to deal with than high statement standard people, right?
Yeah.
Who are selective in their application of it.
Do you believe that we can ever be fully whole? Can we ever have full integrity?
I mean, yes. You probably have to go to the Buddhist temples. I mean, that's what that. I mean, that's what those
monk
pursuits.
mode.
I mean, that's what the
Yeah.
monk mode. I mean, that's what those pursuits are, right? I mean, ironically, what do they call that? I don't know how familiar you are with the whole thing, but what do they call that? They call
I
that.
actually don't know. I don't know what they call
They
that.
call
Yeah.
it it's the oneness,
Okay.
nirvana, bliss, to be one, and that's the whole point. Is it is whole, total completeness, alignment, the oneness, and it's a lifetime. And you have to simplify, because it's so many things going on. You notice in that world, they're not doing all the stuff that you and I are doing here, and because why? I mean, shoot. I mean, also, by the way, you notice, like, in one of the fundamental things that exists, say, in that particular branch, but it's also in, you see this in Christianity, and you see this in Judaism, and you see this in, the more uh, the religions and worldviews that you see sort of more popular here in like the US, more so, but you'll see it over there as well, is you'll see the suppression of desire in every one of them, right? And part of the suppression of desire is so that you're lowering the fear, right? By suppressing the desire, you suppress the fear, right? But also the suppression of desire is to direct the attention into something where you can in fact be whole and complete. So like on the Zen or Buddhism or whatever that side is, where that oneness is, you notice like the more extreme, that monk type approach is it's very heavy on the elimination and suppression of desire, because then you can actually drill it down to the oneness. But if we're living our life, right, the way that we live life, the modern life of America, I mean, how can you suppress desire when you open Instagram? How can
Right.
you suppress desire if you watch any amount of television? Any. I watch sports. How can you possibly suppress desire if you watch sports? The only thing you're doing is being force-fed, funneled advertising. You're not suppressing desire. It's moving to a subconscious with you. Which I don't say it judgmentally. I just like know the environment you're in, the field of action that we live in. You know how many ads the average person sees in a day?
I don't know the average, but I would assume it is an insane amount.
Watch, I'm going to do this because it shifts, right? I'm going to do this right now. Okay. I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to ask Grok. Okay. Because this is, right. How many advertisements? Because I know what the answer is that I've heard before. I'm like, we Google it, but let's just see. Yeah. How many advertisements do we see a day? If you were to guess, what do you think the number is?
If I were to guess the number of advertisements we see today, I would guess it's in the thousands. It has to be minimum 1,000.
Yeah. It averages around 10,000 ads a day.
10,000 ads a day.
A day, brother. A day.
Wow.
That means in 1 month, you're processing 300,000 advertisements. And I know you're not conscious of all those, neither am I. And I'm not judging it. All I'm saying is that is the field of action where we live. 300,000 ads a month, and everybody's like, "Oh, they don't affect me." That's why they spend that much money on them, right? Because they don't work. So, is it possible? Yes, but not practically for the way that we live, because we don't live in those environments, and most of us are not going to go get into a temple and dedicate our lives to being able to do this. So rather than aiming for the elimination of it, I want to aim for having more power over it, which is what discipline is, right? Discipline is having power over yourself, and not power over anybody else, just power over me. So you mentioned something earlier about emotions, right? And I think the best way to think about an emotion is allow yourself to feel the emotion, but remember that you don't have to do what that emotion is telling you to do. Right? An emotion is a signal to act. It comes from the Latin word emotere, right? And it means to move, right? So an emotion is something that's just trying to move you. It's all it's trying to do. It's a signal that says, do this, right? A feeling that says, oh, feel this, do that. And you're not going to control any more than I am the presence of the feeling, right? We can adjust it, we can tweak it, we can do all kinds of different things, but the presence of the feeling, once it's made itself known to us, it's there. You can't undo it. But what we do have power over is what we do with that emotion. So I teach and remind myself, because it's the things I teach are the things that I do, is I remind myself I'm allowed to feel this, but I'm the one who has to decide what to do with it. I'm the one who has to decide the action. So I can feel the anger, but the action has to be my choice. The moment I feel the anger, and then the anger gets to decide the action, all of a sudden now it's not me. Right? It's not me. It's something else. It's my programming. It's my biology, but it's not Brian Kight. Frankly, I don't know, the influence of, every influence I've ever had, all kinds of different things. So yeah, it's a lifelong, the integrity question is it's a lifelong practice. It's the work, it's the activity, but give yourself grace, because you live in a world that I live in, and that is we're surrounded by all this different stuff. And so that's the importance of self-awareness is we're perpetually going to be in gaps. We are.
With the athletes I work with in the identity space, it's the same concepts. I always say you're never gonna fully become something. You're in a constant state of becoming. So it's directionally, are we acting by design or are we acting in default? Are we letting the environment dictate our actions and beliefs, or are we taking some form of self authorship agency in engineering the identity that we want to become, in choosing and dictating our behaviors, knowing that things are going to change, our beliefs, values will change, we'll be influenced by other things, but at least directionally, are we in control of the decisions that we're making? And to your point about the emotion, letting yourself feel the emotion, a lot of times where we get caught up is thinking that the justification of our emotion is okay to let the emotion dictate our action. Just because an emotion is justified, and a lot of times they are, a lot of times you're pissed off for the right reasons. That doesn't give you the okay to do something that is against the type of person you are because your anger is justified or your sadness is justified. Still, you have to dysregulate yourself from the emotion in the sense that that emotion will not dictate your behavior. And again, of course, we will make mistakes and we will fail in those elements sometimes. But more often than not, we have to be able to recognize the emotion, feel the emotion, and then choose to act in alignment with the type of person that we want to be. A lot of times, it really does not matter if your anger or whatever is justified. You know, you have to be able to cognitively make the decisions that align with what you say your values, beliefs, and standards are and your identity is. It's really hard to do, but the best in the world do that.
There's in leadership, one of my strongest rules is the standards have to apply to the people who set them. Okay. Um,
Yes.
and and in life, right? And you've experienced coaching as I have. There's no group that needs more work on that than coaches. Um,
Yep.
I'm not the only one, and I love coaches, but they need a lot of coaches need work on applying the standards that they expect of athletes to themselves. But in life, um, the standard you want to apply, whatever you want to apply the standard, you have to apply the standard to the person across from you as well. So what I would tell anybody listening about emotions who's like, ooh, like, yeah, but I got to be able to express my emotion, and I need this space, and whatever the story is, right? If you're a everybody has their own truth kind of person, okay. If you are emotions are validated, and you got to validate the emotion, and the emotion's got to be able to express itself. You can't contain it or trap it, okay. If any part of you is finding yourself, you know, hearing what you're just talking about, Colin, and being like, I gotta, I, I, I have to be free to be able to let my emotion guide some of this and drive to the action. Okay, okay. But if you are free to act according to what your emotions tell you and how you feel, then that means that the people who interact with you are also free to do the same according to how they feel. And you are not allowed to tell them about anything they do that comes from their emotions. If that's the rule we're going to go by, then we're going to go by it. But if we're in an interaction, the same thing that you are asking me to do with your emotions, you have to do those for my emotions. I am free to say and do whatever I want if I'm emotionally feeling it towards you. And you are not allowed to tell me otherwise, or push back against me, or tell me I'm not allowed to, or tell me that it's wrong, because my emotions justify my actions right now. And what I would find, Colin, is that most people don't want to live that way.
I would say it's a dangerous precedent to set.
We need something other than just what the emotions say. Now, this is why it goes back to the fear conversation of what I would much rather do. Let's just say you and I are in a spot. Let's say you emotionally feel one way, I'm emotionally on the other side of the issue and the topic. We both feel really strongly about it, and now we're feeling kind of strongly towards each other about it. We're in some kind of friction or conflict, and it's not explosive. It's just, not adversarial. Let's just say it's just, we're just on other sides of a topic or an issue, right? And we're both vouching for it. Like, we could both emotionally go at each other, and I could paint you emotionally into a picture of you're being ridiculous, and you could paint me into a picture of you're being ridiculous for your side, and the next we're just bam, 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 bam. And basically, we're just, neither of us are paying attention to what the other person is saying. We're both just expressing our emotion. We could both be doing that. We could do it that way. I mean, we all know where that ends. Okay, that ends with whatever the hell's on First Take, with whatever Stephen A. Smith talks about every week. That or whatever's on whatever's on any television show that is optimized around this stuff, which is I still don't know who watches it, but whatever, it's there. Or how people pay for it, why people pay for it. Or we could do it this way. You could tell me, like, hey, like, I feel this way. I have this feeling. Like, I'm feeling anger. Like, and I'm feeling anger because I'm thinking. Like, you think about this structure. I mean, emotions don't come from nowhere. They come from somewhere. They come from, like in this case, your emotions don't come from me in this scenario, in this fake scenario. Your emotions don't come from me. Your emotions come from what you are thinking about me or about what's going on. And I'm willing to listen to that. Like that helps me understand. You're saying, BK, I'm feeling angry. I feel these emotions. This is also why the emotion wheel makes sense, because when you ask people what they're feeling, most of the time they'll tell you what they're thinking. If we're here and you say, I feel like you did this, and I feel like you did that, those are not feelings. And then I would say, well, I didn't do that. And you'd say, don't invalidate my feelings. Well, my thing is, no, I didn't invalidate your feelings. You told me you felt like I was mean to you. That is not a feeling. You thought that I was mean to you. You thought something. I can critique a thought. I can challenge a perspective. I can't challenge the fact that you're angry. You are angry, indisputable. But you're angry because you're thinking about me in this particular way. And once you start telling me how you're thinking, I can now listen and say, oh, so you're thinking this, and you're thinking that, and you're thinking this. By the way, anybody who is thinking those things would justifiably feel angry. Those thoughts absolutely justify this anger. The question is, are those thoughts appropriate, valid, full of integrity, accurate, reasonable? That now we can have the conversation. So you can break down in these moments. And again, everybody's like, oh, I don't want to have to do all this different stuff. Well, then go half-ass it and do it sloppy and get lost in the emotion and fight with your wife and argue with your coach and resist your boss and back down from fear because you just don't want to actually understand the emotion or do any of the actual work to try to get good at this stuff. But people who are excelling, this is what we do. We look at the emotion, we address the thought that came from it, and we separate between what is factual in that thought, indisputable, like what word did I actually say, and then we identify what thoughts that I add on top of that. So like, maybe you say, hey, I don't like that idea, okay? And then my thought is, you never like my ideas, okay? And then now you are angry because I reject you. Okay, well, guess what? If I never accept your ideas, is that justifiable of being angry? If Brian Kight never listens to your ideas, would that be justified anger?
Probably, yeah.
Sure. Is it factual that I never listen to your ideas? Is that actually true?
Probably not.
No, it's not true. Because why? If you said the truth, what would be the truth? BK, you sometimes don't listen to an idea that I say. How much anger can come out of that statement? Not as much. Not as much. Because guess what? It's like at home, right? Like at home, if your wife says you never take out the trash, spitting angry. Because guess what? That's ridiculous. If you never take out the trash and you never watch the kids and you never help around the house, you're a deadbeat.
Yep.
Okay? But if your wife comes up and says, Colin, you sometimes don't help me when I need it, there's not a whole lot of anger that can come out of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, the only way the anger can be at 10 is if you never do it. The second the statement and the thought actually like meets the reality of you sometimes don't do it, all of a sudden the anger naturally
dissipates.
It starts to dissipate because why? I sometimes don't help you. You're right. I sometimes don't. That's true, and I sometimes don't. But now all of a sudden, the other person isn't as angry because the thought is now kind of met. It's kind of bumped up against the rocks of reality of never. So the anger comes from the thought. The thought comes from what we observed. Once we start to separate from what we saw happen, and then we'll call it a story, but sometimes with story people get caught up in like formality. It's not so much. Yes, it is story, but it's really just what you're thinking. And we don't separate between what we're thinking and what's actually happening. And then here's the danger. The danger is we forget that the things we're thinking aren't what actually happened. We were the ones that authored them. Right? We say you never take out the trash, and we treat that like it's reality. It's not. So this whole like emotional piece is one where you got to understand the mechanics of where it comes from, and we can deal with the emotion. It's fine. Like the emotion is always valid. It's what was feeding it. The story might not, the thought might not have been valid. The story might not have been valid. The perspective might not have been valid, but the emotion was, because the emotion came from whatever that thought was. You got to go up source to find, well, what thoughts are creating this, right? And then, what pre-existing beliefs, right? Like I walk on stage and, well, here's a culture speaker. Oh, like you got an audience of 100 people in a room, 1,000 people in a room. If somebody talks about culture, like I talk about discipline. Out of 1,000 people in the room, how many people have a really positive, optimistic, like excited lens of discipline in a room? Not a ton. So I know that people are coming in with preloaded thoughts as well, and emotions connected to those preloaded thoughts. So I know when I go in that I had this as a football player. I'm 5'9". I played at 180 pounds was my max playing weight. People saw me, thought things about me based on physical appearance, and they had preloaded feelings about what kind of player and competitor I was going to be. And I use that against people because my physical stature and appearance did not match the way that I actually played the game. And I understood that. And I use that to my advantage. So there's all kinds of ways to be able to do this, but you don't have to get rid of the emotion. You got to remember the emotion is simply following the signals that the external stimulus and then your own internal thoughts are telling it what to create. And you can disrupt that process and interrupt that pattern anytime you want. You just have to build the strength and the skill to do it.
Do you ever focus on having fun? Like, is fun ever part of like your own process with the work that you do, or is it strictly impact? Because everybody operates in a different space. And I'm curious in your own practice, because clearly we're intellectual, but it's like how much of this is designed for impact? Obviously a lot, but like how much of this is fun for you?
All of it. I mean, I don't know, everything other than, the expense reports and that's not, that's not fun. But,
Taxes.
booking flights is not the most enjoyable thing, right? The delayed and all that stuff. But no, I mean, look, all of this is fun. To me, all of this is fun. I mean, everybody sources their fun a little differently. I mean, I always have been. I'm an adrenaline person. I grew up in California, surfing, skateboarding, riding motorcycles, catching snakes. I got my college football buddies from Ohio. We were all out to dinner one time. We were all drinking beers, and I think it was after a round of golf, and something happened where I talked about where I grew up in California, in a town called Fallbrook Inland, and it's like the avocado capital of the world. Like it's huge avocado fields. And I'm like, we had snakes everywhere, I'm like, it's like the snake capital of the world. I was like joking, right? But just because we have a ton of snakes in Fallbrook. It looks kind of like Afghanistan. Like the actual terrain looks like Afghanistan. It's like that like high desert, kind of rocky, green, etc. And they're like, oh, snake capital of the world. And my buddy's like, how many snakes, how many snakes have you caught? I'm like, I've probably caught lifetime. I've probably caught 100 snakes. And they were but they were just like, they started yelling at me. Probably had a few beers, right? They started yelling at me like, you've never, and I was laughing because I'm like, look, I'm sorry you grew up in Cleveland and like you've never seen a snake in your life and you're terrified of them. But I grew up in a very different place where snakes were everywhere. I would literally walk out of my backyard and I would go catch like horned toads and snakes and rattlesnakes and gardener snakes. That's what I grew up doing as a little kid. I just did, right? So I've always chased it. So for me, fun is a huge part of life. I'm a big, big fun guy. And I'm really big on the discipline to know what it is that you're targeting. When I play with my daughter, who is 6, my only goal is fun. I'm very competitive, but I'm not, I turn that part of my competitive off and I turn up the competitive part of just fun competing. But when I'm not with my daughter, I don't compete for fun. My fun in that environment comes out of the strain, the struggle, trying to win. That's where my fun comes from. So part of this is the self-awareness of knowing my wife's not like that. The self-awareness of knowing yourself in that way. So I know my wife and I are different. The worst possible workout for me is like some type of class. I hate it. I don't want a class. I don't want to be around. I don't want a class. I don't want to go to a, it doesn't even matter if it's workouts that I like. I don't want to deadlift in a class. I don't want to go to Orange Theory or F45. Keep me away from that stuff. I have no interest. My wife, she goes to work out and she wants it to be fun. It is the last thought on my mind is what fun is being created in this workout. I'm working out for a functional purpose. But for me, that's because I know I enjoy the feeling of being in a squat rack. It's not fun in the traditional sense of how, most people would look at it, but I love that feeling. I love being in the squat rack. I love deadlifting. I love feeling on the edge of my ability. That is fun for me. Right? That was why I liked football. That's why I like it now. Chasing those things is fun for me. And it's a fundamental difference in that piece. So yes, I do have fun, but I also grew up surfing, and like surfing is fun, but it's also physically very demanding and hard, and it's risky, and there's all kinds of stuff. And I feel fun when I feel right on the edge of something. Like I would go swim. Like I'm the kind of guy, I would go swim with great white sharks.
Count me
in the
out
open
on that,
ocean.
brother.
Like I would open ocean swim with great white sharks, right? Because to me, that feeling of being on that edge, oh, I love that. I love it. And the higher the risk, the better. Now, I don't want to be stupid and there's things that I don't do. Like I'm not going to flip motorcycles, right? But yeah, I like to snowboard in trees aggressively. I do. Am I increasing risk? Yes, but I also have some skill. And so I look for like that match of where does my skill set and my mind meet a challenge where I can just barely fit my skill set into what that challenge requires and be okay. To me, like that's the fun zone.
So I gotta the shark thing's wild to me. Sharks are some talk about like fear, dying due to a shark is like high on my list. Wild to me. That's I tip my cap to you. Keep me away from sharks.
True story, by the way. True story, by the way. I told this. I was telling this yesterday to Brent, who works on my team. He lives in Florida. He's a big scuba diver, surfer. 7th grade, we did a class trip. I grew up in California. There's an island off the coast of California called Catalina. Great, it's like huge shark. There's like kelp beds everywhere, so huge shark territory. There's seals all over the place. So you get lots of sharks and everything there. We went out 7th grade. It's this big trip that you did. Every class did it. We went to Cherry Cove and we camped in Cherry Cove out on Catalina, and we would go snorkeling. And it's in a cove and it's blocked, and so there's no sharks are coming in there. But nonetheless, it's California. It's Catalina, and we did bioluminescent plankton, where you go in at night. You ever heard of bioluminescent plankton? So you go in at night. So you load up. It's freezing cold. So you're like you're head to toe in gear, like everything. And you go in at night in the ocean, and you're going out and you're scuba, and you go in, and we go out with our whole class. There's like 30 people. And what bioluminescent plankton are these plankton and algae that are in the water. You see them in waves sometimes when during these certain cycles and certain times of year. And we went and when you disrupt the water and you activated them, they glow. It's like the closest thing you get to sci-fi in the ocean. It's the coolest thing ever. And it glows. Like you don't even think it's possible, but it's amazing. It glows like a glow stick. It's so cool, right? So we did that, but I told this story yesterday. 7th grade, I was scuba diving, and we were in this cove, and it's, 20 or 30 feet down, and we were swimming and chasing lobsters, looking for lobsters. And lobsters swimming in the ocean are pretty cool because they swim backwards, and they're super fast. And I was swimming down, looking under rocks to try to find lobsters. And it's so cold, so I had these like big gloves on, like big thick neoprene gloves. So I swim down under this rock to look for a lobster, and I see this lobster, and then it swims away, and I kind of turn around, and like 5 feet below me, I see this big leopard shark. And a leopard, and I say big, it's like the length of my arm. Okay, so it's not a big shark traditionally, but for leopard sharks, and they're kind of like they dwell generally speaking on the bottom, and they have a little horn. They look like leopards all spotted. They have a little horn coming out the base of the dorsal fin, where the dorsal fin on top meets the body. And it's super cool. And I see this thing, and it's like 5 feet away from me, and it's kind of sitting there, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna swim towards that thing until it swims away from me. And I swam towards it, and it didn't swim away. And I was like, oh, and I grabbed it, and I picked it up, and I was just so in shock that this thing hadn't swam away. And I swam back to the surface with it. And I swam to the surface, and I went to lift it out of the water to show all my friends. And as soon as I lifted it out of the water, it wiggled and jumped out of my hands and swam away. So I was the only person who saw it. But that was the first shark I ever caught. And then number 2 is I got certified to scuba dive when I was 18 years old in the Bahamas, down on Nassau. Got certified, and my very first dive after I'd been certified, the very next day, was in Stewart's Cove and a shark dive. We did a 2-tank dive. First tank, we swam around at the Continental Divide and the Continental Shelf, not the Continental Divide, the Continental Shelf, where basically it's where the shelf of the continent drops off from 100 feet to thousands of feet, and it's crazy. And we just swam around, and there was, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 reef sharks. Some of them are 4 feet, some of them are 6, 7 feet, and they're just swimming around. They just kind of hang around. Then we go up to the boat, took our tank off, put our second tank on, and the second part of the dive was a shark feeding. And they put into these 2 crates all these fish, and you go down, you put on extra weights, and you sit in this little sandy bottom area, maybe 50 feet down, and everybody gets in a circle. And then the guide comes off the boat with these 2 crates full of fish, and he swims down, and then he has this big metal spear with mesh around his arms, and you sit in a circle, and all the sharks come into the area, and then he stabs the spear, and then he feeds them, and you sit in a circle while these sharks feed right in front of you. One of the coolest things ever. That was my very first dive that I ever did after I got certified.
My body is like, I get chills just up my spine, like, just thinking about that. I'm
Oh,
glad there's people like you who enjoy it, my friend. I don't
I
think
did it
I've
with
ever
my
seen you
dad.
doing that.
It was my dad. My dad and I did it together, and it was like one of the coolest memories we had. I got certified finally, and I was 18. We did it, and it was absolutely one of our core memories, was doing this shark dive together. So much so that, like, I talked to my son, and I'm like, man, I think you and I are going to go do, like, this is going to be what you and I do. Like, we're going to go repeat this thing, get you certified. We'll go down. We'll do that dive. It was so fun.
Oh, that just sounds terrifying
There
to
was
me.
one woman, by the way, in this dive. There was one woman where at some point we were down on her weight belt fell off while we were down on the bottom. Her weight belt fell off, and so the way it works in diving is you have what's called a BCD. That's just buoyancy control device, not my BCD, but buoyancy control device, which controls air, and basically it's designed to make you rise or sink more. And then you put on weight, you wear a belt with these like lead weights around. And so what you do is you do it so that, like, when you watch people scuba dive, it looks like they're moving through the middle of the water, where you have to figure out the right amount of weight to keep you here, and then the right amount of air to put in your BCD to keep you even in the water, so you're not like naturally sinking or rising to the surface. You're trying to kind of equilibrium that. And so for this dive, to stay on the bottom for the shark feeding, you do an excess of weight so that it just holds you on the bottom, and then you just inflate your BCD when the dive is done, and it naturally helps you get to the surface. Well, this woman, at some point during the feeding, her belt came off, and she started floating to the surface. Colin, when I say that there were, without exaggeration, there were 100 sharks. There were 100 in a, not a large area. I mean, you could not see to the other side of the circle of people. That's how many sharks there were. Her belt fell off, and she started floating to the surface. And one of the guides that was there, and of course she starts panicking. And one of the guides that was there, he quickly like rolled up like a rock that was on the floor of the ocean, and he like grabbed her. The other guy pulled her down, and the other person rolled a rock and rolled it into her lap, and she sat for the rest of the dive with a rock on her lap in her face. so
Oh
she
my
wouldn't like float
gosh.
up through like and the risk wasn't significant, but nonetheless, it was funny looking over and seeing this woman with a huge boulder on her lap, so she wouldn't float up into the sharks.
Oh man. To circle back to the original question, the reason I ask, right, the question of fun is a lot of times I feel like that's a cop out question or answer. Right? Like, I think we substitute fun for, like, enjoyment, but you look in the reality of sport, it's like, how much fun are you actually having? Like, when you're training, when you're practicing, even in the game, it's how much fun are you really having? It's usually the element of fun comes from the adrenaline, the high intensity, the feeling words after of doing something pretty extraordinary, whether it's moving a bunch of weight in the weight room, or doing something you didn't think physically possible, or going into a game, competing and doing your best, right? The amount of like fun that I think actually takes place in it, competitive sports is minimal. And that's not to distract from like the premise of fun. It's more to just understand like definitions, words, and what they really are. And so, like, because people, like, I talk to people and they'll be surprised that outside of like the work I do with athletes or podcasting or other things, like, I can be pretty reserved. And I say, like, I'm not really a fun, like, person in the sense I'm not going to go get blitzed at bars. I'm not going to go to like concerts and be the guy in the front row jumping and screaming. Right. But, like, that's, like, the enjoyment element for me is, like, I love having these conversations. I love working with athletes. I love the feeling right before I'm about to do something that I either haven't done before or that I know is high stakes. Like, that, like, feeling is, like, what I chase, like, that the adrenaline that's just pumping through your blood, and it's not that, like, I'm always intense and always wired. It's just that I love having meaningful conversations. Those things make me feel, cliche, but like they make me feel alive. Like they bring the best out of me. And so there's a lot of times where I'm in a room and I'm just not talking because I either A, don't want to have whatever conversation's going on, or B, I don't feel like I can add anything meaningful and I'm just kind of an observer of the room. It's like I think fun is kind of a cop out because I don't know how well people define what fun is.
They don't, and you know, you've been on a lot of teams, right? You've you've been in locker rooms, you've seen it. This is actually something specifically as it relates to teams and athletic teams. There's application for this outside of the environment, but I'll share what I observe and what I teach around teams. There's four kinds of people on every team, and these are they're very much so identities, not fixed because you can people mature and they shift and they change, but I mean the identities are really obvious once you see them. They're really obvious. So there's four of them. Every team has four kinds of people. You have competitors, players, chasers, and socializers. And the kind of person, the identity, is based on what that person prioritizes at the highest level. We all prioritize stuff. Right? Everybody prioritizes things, consciously or unconsciously. We all prioritize things. When my wife works out, she prioritizes fun.
Mhm.
I don't. We just have a different set of priorities. Like if someone were to ask me how much fun did you have working out, I'd be like, I don't understand the question. Whereas if I gave my wife a great workout that would exactly target what she wants to accomplish with the practical goal of the workout, but it was absent fun, she would never do it again. It doesn't mean that either of us are wrong. It just means that we're prioritizing different things. Okay? So here's what these are: competitor, player, chaser, socializer. A competitor's highest priority is, shockingly, competing. A competitor needs it to be competitive. It's not the winning or the losing that the competitor wants. They need the challenge. A competitor, their highest priority is, I need something that brings out a challenge I have to overcome to try to get to try to chase winning. I want it and I need it. And if it's not enough, I do not enjoy it. If it's not hard enough, if it's not a challenge enough, it's not, I mean, the obvious, right? Tom Brady was a competitor. Like, he needed it to be that. Players, their highest priority is fun. So the second the activity, the drill, the workout starts to become not fun for them, they're out. What happens is competitors and players, they get along for some 50% of activity in a team. They do not get along for the other 50%. I don't know what those percentages are, but it could be 80-20, whatever. But the second it gets into that era, you see this on every team. Right? I work with teams all over the country. You see this on lots of college football teams. You have a lot of players and competitors, and next thing you know, it gets to the part of a workout or the part of a practice or the part of a season where the fun has basically disappeared, and you're in we are doing the competitive thing required to win championships. And what you see is a lot of players tap out, and the competitors are like, what? And next thing you know, the friction starts, because the competitors are like, this is literally why I came here. I came here to, this is the experience. What are you talking about? Or you mentioned pickleball. Like, when I'm playing pickleball with people, and next thing you know, it's like, hey, let's just have fun. I'm like, no, we're not just, no. What do you mean just have fun? No, what? No, that fun is when we're trying hard. Like, you're not trying hard and you're not trying to win and you're just kind of taking it casual. That's not enjoyable. How is that? Because we're just having fun. I'm like, and it's like they're speaking a different language to me. Okay. Which is why I don't want to be in that environment with, this is the thing, as a competitor, I'm a competitor. That's like my identity tied to that. I don't want to be in environments with players when we're in a competing environment. Now, if we're playing Candyland and we're playing a board game at home, don't be a competitor, be a player. If you and I were hanging out with our wives around a table on a Friday night, I'm not in competitor mode. I'm in player mode. Because why? What's the goal of that night? It's not to chase the victory. It's trying hard enough to make sure that it's fun. We're just playing board games because then the priority is fun tonight. That's the priority. But if we're playing pickleball, now it's like,
it's funny you bring like the.
But if I'm playing pickleball with my 6-year-old daughter, now we're back to this spot. And then keep that thought. So let me hit you with so here's the 4: competitor, player, chaser, socializer. Competitors prioritize competing and the pursuit of winning and trying to not lose. But it has to be an actual competition. So playing against 6-year-olds it doesn't do it. Like, it has to be against a worthy opponent or a worthy challenge. Players, they want it to be fun. As long as it's fun, I'm in. But the second it stops being non-traditionally fun, their effort goes off a cliff. Chasers, they prioritize the reward. I'll do it as long as I get something out of it. I'll do it if I get something. But I'm not after competing to win. I'm not really after the fun. I want the reward, whatever the reward is. It could be anything. And then the socializer, they just want to have a group to belong to, or they want to be with their friends. And that's it. My son is 9. He's not a competitor right now. He's a socializer. He wants to be with his boys. Some of the kids on his team are competitors. They like the socializing part, but they are there to pursue winning in 3rd grade. And that's just difference in wiring and kind of the stages and all that. My son is a socializer right now. That's fine. Totally cool. But when he goes onto the team, I'm a competitor. So I kind of approach him as a competitor. He's a socializer. He's like, I just want to be with my buddies. Next thing you know, my priority for this is up here. His priority for the thing I have is down here. And his priority is up there. And I'm like, I believe in that too. I just don't believe in it at the same priority level as you do. So this is what happens on teams is every human being is prioritizing something, right? They're prioritizing competing to win or lose, fun, rewards, and the social aspect. And the differences on teams and the differences in life is that based on the order that you put them in, because we all value stuff. We all value things. Like, there's nothing wrong with rewards. Everything right. But if rewards are above competing hard, what happens? You end up with a different set of behavior patterns. They respond to circumstances differently. They pursue goals differently. They still have it. It's all there, but the manner in which we prioritize it changes the identity. So when you're asking about fun, you're hitting this, I'm like, yeah, no, absolutely I have fun, but I don't prioritize fun above competing. Other people, they prioritize fun above competing. So they're like, hey, quiet down this whole competitive thing and the effort and the strain. Like, let's back away from that because we're losing touch with the fun part. And when they say that and I hear it, I'm like, I don't believe in that. It's just, it's not wrong. It just, I prioritize differently. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And can't you see in your own team experience, you can see, oh, that guy was a chaser. He was always a chaser. Like if there was a reward, you got great effort from him. If there was no reward, you did not get great effort from him.
I think you
Socializer.
see a lot of that too. It's very apparent too in professional sports right now, even in college sports with just the different nature that even was 10, 15 years ago. It's crazy to see how much the sports realm has cycled in terms of the, like you said, the different four core players or four core personalities on a team. A lot of guys happen to be in that player range right now. I think the competitors are able to, more so than ever, separate themselves from the pack because I feel like more than ever, there's players as opposed to competitors.
More players, more chasers, more socializers. They've always been there. The distribution has kind of changed, and their power, so to speak, or the ability to lean into it. Where in the culture around, right, players, chasers, socializers are all more accepted than they were in the 80s and in the 90s, right? In the 80s and the 90s, you could do it, but you were not you were just sort of less core, right? Like
Yes.
it just wasn't as acceptable. Now it's a lot more acceptable, which again, there's elements of that have helped, and there's elements that have shifted. But that fundamental shift between between the hey, we're not having fun, we're not giving great effort, and like my wife and I always use my wife as the example of like, if I try to apply my priorities to my wife, it doesn't work. She doesn't have the same priorities. If she tries to apply the same priorities to me, it doesn't work. If I'm playing pickleball and I'm playing against a bunch of people who are players and I am a competitor, they don't like me because they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "This is when it just got fun. Like this is the fun part.
Yes.
Where
Yes.
the fun is like not being angry at each other, but the fun is I'm
Going
trying
hard.
so hard to beat you, and you are trying so
Yeah.
hard to beat me, and like this is the fun. So like if you and I are playing pickleball against each other, and you're a competitor and I'm a competitor, I was literally talking to my wife about this, like with uh, uh, somebody that I know. There's like a guy I know played basketball at Ohio State, and we do like these little couples pickleball tournament things once a year. We call it the Be4th of July tournament. It's like on the 3rd of July, so it's before the 4th. So we call it the Be4th, and everybody dresses up in these cool costumes and we play. And like for me, the worst couples to play against are the couples that are just there to have fun. Because I'm like, I walk out in the court and I'm like we're gonna win 11-2, and you're both gonna, and then I'm gonna kind of like I'm gonna be like trying because I don't like I'm not gonna just like casual because you're casual.
Right.
That's not enjoyable. But I love playing against other competitors who aren't antagonistic because I'm like if we played against each other, like you compete really hard, I compete really hard. We both I enjoy that fact that you are trying everything in your power to beat me. And
Yes.
I enjoy using everything in my power to beat you while you are trying everything in your power to not get beat by me. That moment, that feeling, and being in that environment, to me, that is fun. And other people are like, I just don't get joy out of that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with you. Don't say there's anything wrong with me. But if we are on a team, we've got to figure out, or we're in a partnership, we got to figure out what your identity is, what my identity is. And then we have to figure out what is going to be our team's identity, independent of our own personal preferences. Because this is where a lot of coaches are getting themselves in trouble. Kind of open up a couple threads here, but a lot of coaches getting themselves in trouble because they've designed their teams and their programs and their approaches around players, not around competitors. And they are satisfying for fun. And what happens is you build a program satisfied for fun, or in college football, you build a program satisfied for chasers. Texas A&M under Jimbo, they built a program for chasers. What happened was they got a program for chasers.
Yep.
They filled their program with chasers. And then you get a program that has behavior patterns of chasers, and that does not compete hard enough to win. It didn't compete hard enough to win in the Sun Belt Conference, let alone the SEC.
I had this conversation with a psychologist, and they disagreed with me, which was okay. And I'm curious to hear your take. But as a part of athletics and like high level competitors, and I throw myself in like the competitor landscape, is part of what makes competition so fun is that you have something to lose. And either consciously or subconsciously, you have accepted this may not go my way. And that's what kicks in the adrenaline, kicks in the competition. Because if I just know I'm going to win every time, it's not that enjoyable. Like me, like just beating on whomever, my little brother's not a good pickleball player. Me just beating the crap out of my brother in pickleball is not that fun. But when I meet a worthy adversary and I'm competing and I'm going hard, like that subconscious level of I have something to lose here is what just makes competition so enjoyable for me. And a lot of the high level athletes that I work with as well share that like I have something to lose. I have to bring a different level. And while that loss hurts and it stings and it sucks when it happens, it's part of that is like what I love.
Yeah, that's that your ability meeting a challenge where it's like a puzzle piece, like your ability just enough to overcome that challenge and beat it. If your ability exceeds the challenge too far, there's no stimulation.
Right.
There's nothing interesting. Like when I teach this same thing, I use the example of if you take a football team out and you take a high school football team out, and you could go play, the Ohio States of the world could go play Kent State every game, and like that's not interesting.
Nope.
It's not fun
For either side.
Yeah, like I could go. My son was playing a video game, and he put himself on level 10, and he put the opponent on level 1. And he was doing it because he was trying to like get these rewards or get some stuff, whatever. And I had the conversation with him about, hey, like you're not going to get better doing that. And like if you want to get better, because he was complaining about one of his cousins was beating him at the game. I'm like, dude, if you want to get better, like you can't orchestrate these types of environments. But you will have a lot of people who in Madden, like kids, like in Madden, like they turn themselves up to Hall of Fame level, and then they put the opponent on rookie level, and they get some joy out of that. And then they get in the world, and they meet against a real challenge, and it's not fun. And what happens? Again, I'm not saying the video. I'm not trying to draw a linkage between what people do in video games and life, but like just anywhere in the world, like that's not an interesting challenge. And so, right. What we want to find is we want to find those we want to find those tests, those games, those opponents, those playing fields that require us to stretch our ability to just barely be capable of achieving that, and requires all of your skills. That's what's cool. That's what's fun. But if go the other way, right? If you are Kent State, you do not want to go play Ohio State and then Indiana and then Miami and then Texas A&M, and that, what I'm saying, that's not fun as well, because then it's the opposite, right? The test and the challenge is too far outside your grasp, and that's not interesting because the gap is too large, and now all of a sudden that competitive thing is gone again. So yes, some people are wired with the David and Goliath attitude, and like they just love doing the biggest possible thing that is impossible. Yes, that's really rare, and if you're that kind of person and you've known it for a long time, and fine. But for most of us who are in that zone or kind of wondering about that, it's finding challenges that require you to stretch it. I always look at like as a measure, like 5 to 10% beyond your current ability. Like I would love it if, like competing with you, I would love it if you were like a 5 to 10% better pickleball player than I was. If you are 100% better than I was, the game very quickly gets not fun for me and for you.
Yep.
But if you're 5 to 10% better, or I'm 5 to 10% better than you, that means I still have to work hard to beat you.
Yep.
You have to work really hard to beat me. And then that dynamic can actually kind of shift where it's like, ooh, I'm a little bit better than Colin, but man, he's playing really well, or he got me. And if I let my guard down, he's going to smoke me. And then I don't want that. That's a fun challenge. Or vice versa. You're like, oh man, like I'm a little better than BK, but I'm not enough better than to relax. And I'm like, man, Colin's better than me, but like I'm chasing. That is like, that's the spot where it's like, boom, it lights up, right? That's the cool part. And that's for everybody. Like everybody can feel that. It's just figuring out how to keep them in. And then last thing on this for you go to the next one is there's nothing wrong with the desire or the priority of winning and losing and chasing it. There's nothing wrong with having fun and prioritizing that. There's nothing wrong with rewards and prioritizing that. There's nothing wrong with socializing and prioritizing that. One of the things that you can do is if you find that you are a player, not a competitor, then what happens is just attach the fun and the gamification to the things that competitors need to do. Just add some fun to it. Now you're not going to be able to do it with everything, okay? But you can do it with some. So you can engineer some fun into it to keep those kinds of people engaged. People are who they are. You can't. If I try to make you a player or a chaser, could I?
No.
Here you go. I couldn't. Now, over time, could you become one of them if your life stimulated you a certain way and you evolved and you kind of did? Sure, but I can't tell you to prioritize and value something that is not at the top of your list. I can't do that.
Right.
So if you find that you're married to or working with or leading or coaching or interacting with, or you are player, competitor, chaser, socializer, whatever it is that you are, you got to recognize that is where that person is. That is what they are. So you either have to figure out how to work with that, work through that, work around that, or you got to eject. If it's not tenable and it does not work, do not say you got to become a competitor. That'd be like saying you got to stop being a competitor and start being a chaser. You got to start putting rewards at the top of your list. You're competing too hard. Be somebody who goes after rewards.
I love
You're not going to.
You're competing too hard.
You know what I'm saying? You're not going to. Yeah, if someone goes, you're competing too hard. Nobody's ever gone, oh, good call. I'll stop being interested in that. So rather than judging it and telling people what they have to be, you start from the point of humanity of people are what they are right now. So you got to start with that's where they're going to be, and you got to work with it. So yeah, if you realize that your starting quarterback is a chaser, probably not going to work. Okay. Not saying it can't, but you don't see him winning championships very often, right? At any level. So, or whatever, they can do it as long as they have a huge talent gap. But when that talent gap goes away, so you either got to communicate it and then build something around it so that doesn't cost, or you got to find a way to get the right person in that role because you got the wrong person in that role. That's just, you're not going to change people like that. That's just, that doesn't, at least not on a cycle that, not on a timeline that you need it to. People, that change takes a long time for a person to get to, and they get there on their own, not because you commanded it as a leader.
Well, hey, BK, I appreciate you coming on, man. This was a blast of a conversation. I'm happy we got back on here. If there's anything you're working on or anything you want to promote, please, how can people reach you? How can they get at you? How can they see what you're doing?
Yeah, so dailydiscipline.com is, we talked about it today, right? In the newsletter, been doing this 8-9 years in, and we've got two things. One here now, and then another one here coming soon. We've got our community, the Daily Discipline community, which is free to join and get some extras, right? Reflection questions from the newsletter, some tips, and how to bring some things in. If you're a self-directed, hey, I want to kind of go beyond just the ideas. Obviously, the newsletter you can read and grab it But if you're like, hey, I want to do some work on this. Like I want to, and you're a self starter, join the free community. That's where we've got, I don't know, 1,200 people in there right now. And we add some extra stuff in there that we don't put in a newsletter for people who want to grab it. You can also interact with more people. And then here over the next, we're in, start of February, here over the next week or two, we'll see when the exact launch is we're launching a new, we're still playing with the name. So I'll hold a lead on the name, but it's inside the community. Is what we've recognized is people need directives for, like I mentioned earlier, putting these principles into action in their lives. We've forgotten more principles than we are even applying, right? You're listening to, your podcast, you're listening to Huberman, you're listening to all these different places, you listen to all these different things, and our consumption exceeds our application. So, and same thing with me, right? 2088 daily disciplines. I know that the number of people who have implemented even half of what I've written, probably nobody, right? So what we're doing is I'm launching, it's a weekly challenge. And every week, and this is, there's a cost associated with this, but you also get to join the group and come into the community and do this. Is every week I'm going to provide a challenge that is essentially, think of it like a workout for your behavior skills. Right? Think of it like, why does somebody hire a personal trainer? Why is there a strength coach? Why do you go find programming? Well, what do you do to build your workouts? Like you go find out some good programming and then you go into the weight room and you go do that. You do that programming. And some people love to do the programming themselves. I'm one of those people. I like to do the programming myself. But I also pull from a lot of places, a lot of sources, and I construct my programming. Well, what I've recognized is that with behavior skills, people don't have a way to work out. And they don't know where they're getting their programming from. So what I've created is a system where we take people on a journey where every week I'm giving challenges for how to develop behavior skills specifically in the field of action, in your actual life. And I give you challenges, things you've got to go do, skills you've got to go develop, actions, activities. Basically, my job is to help you convert principles into practice in your life. And so if you're somebody who is saying, man, I got to start doing some of this stuff. I gotta get into action. This would be for you. So, come find us in the daily discipline community. It'll be super easy to find. And there'll be a lot of other people tackling these challenges and learning how to apply principles in their life and go, accomplish things, get things done, strengthen their discipline, build better relationships, and start building a lot of evidence and skill sets. Start stacking bricks in their life.
Heck yeah, man. I love that. Hopefully some of my listeners get in. I'm gonna have to look at getting in on this. Um, but I appreciate you, man. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Tune in next week. Check us out, athleticfortitude.com. Download the pod, subscribe to our YouTube channel. 5 stars on the baby. Thank you, BK.